Good day, I'm Vincent Saxtutter, and this is the After the Age of Fire channel. Today I'd like to make some remarks about how we should face reality around us, uh, what our posture should be, our focus, um, because I think how we prepare ourselves and how we focus as we take on our daily lives and as the human race takes on its challenges can make an immense difference in how we handle and how we in our success in understanding what's going on and what to do about it. Um, so I'd just like to start with a simple example, and I'd like to talk about traffic accidents. So you know as well as I do that traffic accidents take many lives and injure many people around the world every day. They're one of the principal risks of death um, for us humans, and so we can think about how to solve this problem. And this is just meant as an illustration of a particular way, a particular posture you can take about solving a problem. And the the posture I want to talk about is the one where you think about all the things we can do about traffic accidents. We can make laws about drunk driving, or we can make sure there are no potholes in the streets, or we can make sure, or we can increase the amount of driver training. Um, we can put more police on the road. Um, we can make sure that everyone wears seat belts, and the list goes on. It's easy to list 20, 30, 40, or 50 things that we can do to reduce and eliminate traffic accidents. And you can argue about whether it's more important to make sure everyone wears a seatbelt, or it's more important to make sure that there are railings on on the sides of our roads, or any of 50 other measures. What is the priority? What's the best way to get results? And the fact is, we can't do all of them, or certainly we'll have to make some more important than others. We can't do all of them with full energy. So we have to focus on some measures to reduce traffic accidents at the expense of some others that we may keep in mind, but but uh, but we'll have to take a back seat just simply because we don't have the resources and energy to do everything perfectly. For instance, maybe we'll never start requiring that everyone takes 2 years of driver training before they can drive, um, or some such. There are limits to what we can do. Um, and then because there are limits, there will be arguments between people. Some people will think we should do this thing first or put the priority on this thing, say seat belts, and another group will think that no, we should put the priority on drunk driving. Another group will say no, we should put the priority on fixing the roads, or completely rebuilding the roads. And there'll be continual debate and misunderstandings and accusations about who's doing the right thing and who's doing the wrong thing. So that's one way to approach traffic accidents, and I think it's great to do as much as you can to try to reduce the risk of traffic accidents. But I want to discuss another posture which is very important. The posture is to recognize that traffic accidents are just a reality, and whatever we do, still millions of us will be dying from traffic accidents. So whenever you walk on the road or get in a car, you're taking your life in your hands and other people's lives as well. It's the single most dangerous thing you'll do today, most likely. Um, at least for most people, most of the time, the single most dangerous thing you can do today, that you will do today, maybe not, maybe you could think of more dangerous things to do, but the most thing that you actually will do today will be get in a car or cross the street. And I think I'm trying to use this example to illustrate an attitude and a posture. One is to think about, to register the word traffic accidents and to immediately start thinking about all the things that I or politicians or policemen could do to prevent them, or should have done. And another one is to, sure, keep that in mind. I could prevent my own traffic accident by making sure that I've slept enough before I go out in traffic. Okay, but keep that in mind. Sure, I could. But to first recognize that whatever I do and whatever some politician could have done, the fact is that going on that street or taking that walk across the zebra crossing has a chance of killing me. And what should I think about that? How should I react to the fact that there is a risk crossing the street? I can say as much as I like about how there wouldn't be a risk if so and so had done something better, if somebody was driving safely, or if some politician or some construction worker had done their job. Fine. I can talk about that, but the fact is, regardless of what somebody did or didn't do, whether that's a safe driver or a crazy driver, the fact is that crossing a road is taking your life in your hands, and getting in a car is taking your life in your hands. And so with this example, I'm trying to point out that there's a big distinction you can make between focusing on the reality around you as it is and recognizing it for what it is and reacting appropriately to that. Okay. For instance, I might choose to be more careful about just not crossing the road very often, or maybe I will, whenever something seems to make driving a little bit more dangerous, I may pull over. That's something I can do in reaction to the actual real danger. Okay, and there's another attitude which says, okay, instead of focusing on the danger, I'll focus on one of a million things that should be done or could be done about the danger. And in other words, on different policies and actions that different people could take. And sure that they go together, but I think often, instead of looking at the real and present danger or the real thing around us, we spend all our time discussing possible responses. So this will come up again and again as I develop the material of this podcast. But one obvious example is energy. And just as another illustration, there's a challenge that energy energy takes something to get it. It's hard. There's some difficulty about getting energy, and it also some side effects, some things that risks or pollution or whatever that happen when you use energy, any sort of energy. And there may be limits to how much energy we can use, and you can discuss you could also talk about particular penalties like global warming or whatever. And so there's the fact that energy is something that exists outside of the human race. It's existed for billions of years, and we show up as latecomers and we want to use energy. Okay, but the fact is it's bigger than us. Okay, and there are some difficulties about getting it and using it, and that has nothing to do with us. It's just the fact that's the way energy is. Then there's what we're going to do about it, and and the point I'm trying to make here is that in our discussion about energy, and including the discussion about green energy and so on, I don't think there's really that much attention given to what energy is in particular, or or the outside world. Instead, the attention is given to who's building how many windmills, wind turbines, or um, whether some country is decreasing or increasing their use of coal, or whether I personally uh, am turning off my cell phone at night to save energy, for instance. There's a lot of talk about different technologies, different things that individuals could do, that groups and societies could do, and a lot of finger pointing about who should do what. Okay, but I think before you get around to thinking about who should do what or should have done what, you should pay more attention to what energy is, and what is the real difficulty. What are the difficulties of using energy, and what are the benefits, and why does energy work the way it does, and where could you get it, um, or did we get it 1,000 years ago? And there's a lot of, I'm saying here, that instead of focusing on policies, on on all the things we could do to solve a problem, why don't you take the problem as it is and first examine it very carefully? In fact, you should always be giving more of your attention to the problem than to the solution. You should understand very well the world around you before you begin to think about, okay, what I'll do about it. That's the fundamental point I'm trying to make here in this episode, is that I think it's very important to keep your eyes very wide open to what the world is like before you get around to thinking about what you should do about it, and keep the focus on what's outside of you more than on yourself, and for the human race to focus on what's outside of the human race more than it focuses on itself. Otherwise, in fact, it seems to me that often nowadays we have a storyline where there's 1,000 challenges confronting us, and the correct solutions are all things that, various techniques that you can use to try to solve these challenges. And all our discussion is not about the challenges, it's about the things we could do or should do. Things that I will call best practices. So maybe it's using wind turbines instead of coal, or maybe it's being a democracy, or maybe it's being a communist nation, or maybe it's globalism, or maybe it's, instead of globalism, some sort of local oriented behavior, or maybe it's better education for children, or maybe it's psychiatry or counseling for whoever wants it, or maybe it's some different approach to marriage, or maybe it's capitalism. Okay, and then whenever you mention a particular problem, then people instantly begin discussing whatever their viewpoint is about what should be done about it. I think this is just wrong-headed. Okay, we didn't create our situation. We contributed to the situation, but certainly the human race arrived on this planet sometime in the last few million years, and this planet was already here. We didn't create it, and like every other species, will live or die by how well we adapt to our situation. Adapting to our situation involves first noticing it and seeing it for what it is. And it seems to me that very often we're not about seeing things for what they are. Instead, what we're about is giving a list of, we're given a list of 60 different things that, or 1,000 different things you could do about green energy or about global warming, and you can find them, and people have their favorites. Some people, for instance, want to use nuclear energy. Some people want to make sure that um, that that the rich countries get use less energy, or or maybe you should just make sure to turn off your lights at night. Um, I think the first thing to do is not to think about what you should do about things, but to understand things as they are. Um, and that goes in many, the same principle applies in many different situations. Like if you want to know what the weather is today, is it really better to check to turn on the TV, or look at, at, at the internet to see what the weather is, or is it better to go outside for a minute and put your finger out to test the wind? Okay, will you learn, which way will you learn more? Um, I submit it's the second one. Um, if you want to understand a person, is it better um, to 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 have a good chat with them and try to get to know them, or is it better to read about and apply what you've learned about, say, how childhood memories and trauma can affect people, and try to find those patterns in the people around you? Well, sure, there's room for talking about childhood trauma and childhood memories and so on, but you'll be better off knowing specific people if you actually take time with them. Um, so overall, the main point here I'm trying to make is just, let's focus on the reality around us. Let's take most of our time looking at the facts of the situation, and let's let our responses to that reality take the back seat. And in particular, that's what I'm going to be doing throughout at least the first section of this channel, where I'll be talking about our what we've been doing for the last 250 years, and our situation now, and what we've been doing. That's my question is, we can just look at how much energy we've used, and then we can look at how much energy is available, and most of my time will be talking about how much energy is available or not available, and why, and what are the problems that come with getting different kinds of energy, and and can we continue using the amounts of energy that we use now, and how long can we continue that? Um, and afterward, we can talk about, once we understand our situation as far as using different resources, especially energy, then we can think about what would be appropriate responses. But it'll take a lot of development, a lot of finding out things before we can begin to think about appropriate responses. It's not just energy, of course. It's not just resources. I think this applies in every part of human life. First, you take reality. You distinguish between yourself and the reality around you, or if there's a group, that group should make a distinction between itself and the reality around that group, or if it's the human race, the human race should make a distinction between itself and the physical world around it, or spiritual world, whatever, and then understand what the truth of the situation is. The truth is not something you write yourself. It's not a particular set of solutions that you've decide to adopt the truth of the situation as something that comes out from around you, and then you have a choice about how to respond to it. So if there's a risk that a ball might be flying in your direction, it's better to take a look at it before you swing at it. So I hope I'm making myself clear enough. I want to say this also connects to, some people may wonder, some people may have some doubts about a scientist speaking about our situation. There's been too many scientists talking about, and too many politicians and other authority figures talking about just trust the science. And so you may have some doubts about listening to the opinions of yet another scientist. Okay. And well, I think if a scientist claims a sort of authority that has been claimed in recent years, and to decide matters of social organization and responses to particular situations, they've really overstepped their role as a scientist. The scientist's first responsibility, and almost the only responsibility, is to examine the world around us and to look at it extremely carefully and to try to understand it. And once you and to also say clearly what you don't understand, and as a rule, and in fact always, the things that we don't understand outnumber the things that we understand 10 to 1 or 100 to 1. There's always some room, even when we're sure about one thing, there's lots of other things that we won't be sure about. And so I'm not trying to encourage you to just trust the science, but I believe that science is real science is an endeavor to try to learn as much as you can about the physical world around us, and to understand it as well as possible, and to say the truth about what we understand and what we know. And so, and in general, and I've known many scientists and mathematicians, in general, we're trying to tell the truth. We're trying to get to the bottom of things, at least in a particular, maybe very small subject area. And it's honestly trying to do the best we can at understanding something deeply. That's what it should be, and most of us are at least halfway trying to do that. So what I'm trying to give you in these episodes is, I'll be trying to give you what's known and what's not known, and I'm not going to make things simpler than they are. And I'm going to try to talk about the way things are, and then what we should do about it. I'll draw some conclusions, but I'll tell you exactly why. But I think there will be lots of things that you can think about yourself and decide what conclusions you would draw. And when there's some debate or some uncertainty, I'll try to say clearly what that is. So I'm proud to be a scientist, and I think in particular in this particular moment in the history of the human race, some very simple science can tell us a lot about our situation and what our possibilities are for the future. Just simple observation of what we've done for the last 250 years, how that fits in with the overall structure of this planet and our place on this planet, and how could that possibly change? Is it possible that we can keep multiplying our energy use every 22 years, or is there a limit? Um, and what are the possible things one could do about this situation? Uh, those are things that scientists can be helpful with. You know, um, I'm not um, going to tell everyone to wear masks or something. Based on things that were invented or studied over only in the last 5 years. If there's solid science for it, I'll tell you. If there's not, I'll tell you there's not. So I hope that helps to reassure you that I'm not a trust the science guy. I personally believe that many scientists, or almost all scientists, are doing their best to find out more about the truth of the world around them. I think they can go wrong, and in general, and there's also the possibility, and in some disciplines, the certainty that many of them are sort of pursuing a wrong-headed direction, which is sure to give them results that are half wrong. But still, they're trying to do their best, most of them, and uh, it's very useful at least to try to see what they think they've come up with. You can make your own judgments. So I think that's the main things I was meaning to talk about in this episode. And in the next episode, we'll finally get into talking about our past, about our energy development over the last 250 years. Actually, I think I forgot to discuss one thing in enough detail. One is I talk about. I just want to call out again this phrase that I like to use called best practices. Best practices are all these solutions that that we have for our situation. They could be democracy, or they could be further education, or they could be particular changes in the family structure, or they could be using certain technologies instead of others, or they could be capitalism, or they could be globalism, or or they could be a parliamentary democracy, or maybe I already mentioned that, or particular ways of structuring the parliamentary democracy, the judicial, or the balance of powers, or it could be, or you could think about psychiatry, modern medicine. All of these are different things that we think if we continue to use them and use them well, we'll be able to handle all the challenges that come to us. And I just have a fundamental disease. I'm unease about about the presumption that whatever challenges we have in front of us can be solved by things we do. For instance, will we really be able to continue to protect ourselves from bacteria in the way that we have over the last 80 years or so after antibiotics were discovered? We were able to do amazing things. We were able to recover from amazing injuries, and simply by sprinkling some powder around, or drinking something. But it's not clear that our technological development, our ability to develop new things, antibiotics, will be able to keep up with the bacteria. So I think it's easy to place too much faith in our own capability to solve problems. It's part of what I'm talking about with putting your focus on reality, not on yourself. Just as no matter what we do, we're going to still have, a lot of us are still going to be killed by traffic accidents, It may be that no matter what we do and no matter how hard we study and try to develop new antibiotics, it might be that a few hundred years from now we're back to some situation not too far from how things were before penicillin. Or it could be that, however hard we try, we may be unable in the end to continue multiplying our energy use by two. And there's any number of other challenges. We just may be unable to get there. So I think first study the challenge first, and don't have complete confidence in the progress of science and technology or any other of the million best practices that we've developed over the last hundreds of years. In particular, I have less trust in the best practices that we developed, say, once the Industrial Revolution got started in the last 250 years, than I have in the ones that came before that. So I like reading and writing and parliamentary democracy. I'm not. I don't think we have quite as sure evidence of the reliability of some of the more modern features of the modern democracies, things that were developed only in the last 100 or 200 years. Things up till 250 years ago have been tried and tested in many situations. For the last 250 years, we've been in a very special situation of a glut of energy and any number of other resources, and that glut of resources may have made things possible for us that we may not be able to still continue in the next hundreds of years. So I think we have to be a little bit careful about presuming that our best practices are going to continue being so useful in the next hundreds of years, or whether they're going to be absolutely whether they're for us, whether they're with us forever. Now that we've learned them, we'll never go back, and maybe we'll have to fight for them. Maybe the whole business of say representative democracy, or of I don't know, universal education, universal literacy, will be things that we'll have to have discussions all over again about them, and in order to preserve, say, literacy for everyone, maybe we'll have to have a lot of fighting to make sure that happens. Maybe it was easy to do over the last 100 years, maybe more difficult to keep it going. And we'll have to judge about these things that we think are absolutely essential, whether they if things are more difficult for us 100 years from now, we'll have to think carefully about what's really essential and what's not. And I hope that many of the things that we've grown to love will be preserved, but there may be a lot of thinking about what we need and what we're willing to do to make sure that happens. So this is all some reservations about our best practices. I'm just saying I don't think we can trust that we have a toolbox that will solve all of our problems. And this comes back to that emphasis on reality versus ourselves. It's better to look at the reality and then figure out what in our toolbox could help, if anything, or if nothing's going to help, what are we going to do about it? So that's what I'm trying to get at. Anyway, thank you for your listening. I hope you keep coming back. I hope you subscribe, and it would help me. And I'll see you next time. Keep coming back.